Okay, let me know. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I've resorted over. See, I normally have this mic. This is my podcast mic, and it's typically not an issue, but I had to resort over to the computer, the Mac mic. So let me know if you guys can hear me now. Okay, you can hear me. The quality is probably not quite as good. I'll probably try to stay a little bit closer so that you guys can hear me clearly and that the replay comes out clearly. So thank you for being here. Sorry about the technical glitch. That's why I asked. So before we get started, hit me up with your name and the city and state you're logging in from. And I'll give you some quick shout outs, and then we're going to jump into a live Q&A today. This Q&A is going to be focused on freight broker and freight agent startup. So if you're considering becoming a freight broker, freight agent, or you've been on the fence for a while about becoming a freight broker, freight agent, or maybe you've just applied for your authority, or maybe you're just going through the freight broker bootcamp training, this is for you, right? This is for you. This is your opportunity to ask questions, and I will try to give you the absolute best feedback that I can to get you going in the right direction. So that's why I'm here. That's why you're here. So let's give some quick shout outs, and then we'll get this show on the road. Again, not only your city and state, but also give me your name, because sometimes the usernames are a disaster to try to read and sometimes quite embarrassing. Anyway, we got Jim Brown from Atlanta. We got Mike from LA. We got Elite Canine Academy from Austin. We got Mario from San Antonio. We've got Helen from Indianapolis. Awesome. We got Joe. Welcome. We got DC Bannett from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We got Killen Logistics from LA. Laura from Austin. Corey Buckin from Montana, as always. Ray from Pasadena. So we got a lot of people coming in. Texas, Florida, California, Montana. We got Caitlin from Jacksonville. We got Anthony Shannon from PA, from Anthony from PA. So awesome. We got people from everywhere. James from Houston. Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Truly appreciate it. I know sometimes it's hard to get away during the middle of your day. This will be available on a replay. I do stream this on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So wherever you want to watch it, you can watch it. I see a lot of people are watching on YouTube, a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of LinkedIn, but wherever you're coming in from, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm humbled that you're more than willing to spend the next half hour to an hour with me. We're going to try to keep this relatively short. Again, this is a Q&A format. So when I say go, hold your questions. When I say go, feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and you can ask me anything, and I'll do my best to try to point you in the right direction. If I don't have the answer, because believe it or not, I don't know everything, I will try to point you to a resource or someone else that might be able to answer that question for you. So who else we got? And then we'll get this thing live here. Sean from Pasadena, Bill from Austin, Miriam from Philly. Sweet. Awesome. So happy that you guys are here. Really appreciate it. Do me a huge favor. If you've been here before and you learned anything, or you want me to continue with these live trainings, hit the like button no matter where you're at. If you're on LinkedIn, smash the like button. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, okay? The price of admission today is for you to do two things. One, hit the like button, and number two, ask good questions. That's all I ask of you. These are absolutely free. Again, you didn't have to put a credit card in order to get onto this live Q&A. So I'm excited that you're here. Hit the like button, ask some good questions, and that's your cue. The ball's in your court. Start asking questions. Feel free to hit me up. Anything to do with freight broker, freight agent, startup. We could talk about sales. We could talk about rating. We could talk about finding carriers. We could talk about market conditions. We could talk about whatever you want. All right. And we'll do our best to try to give you some really good, solid information that will help you make good decisions moving forward. Okay. So here we go. Dennis from Lexington. Awesome. Dennis is in my sales accelerator, which we just had our first of the 8-week calls last week. So we'll have the next one this Wednesday. So welcome, Dennis. Thanks for joining. All right. First question is, would you recommend starting a brokerage or pairing with a larger company? Okay. So you're asking me, should you start with a freight brokerage? Should you start your own freight brokerage? Or I'm not sure if you're asking, should you start as a W-2 employee or should you start as a freight agent? Could you rephrase the question? Let me know what you're really trying to do. is the question start as your own licensed freight broker or start as a freight agent? Or are you talking about start your own freight brokerage or go to work as a W-2? Because my answer is going to be different. Okay. So rephrase that question if you would, Elite Canine Academy. And then I will try to answer that question for you. Who else has questions about freight broker startup? We usually have more questions than we have time. Okay. So we're limited on time. I'm going to try to keep this to under 30 minutes if possible. So that puts pressure on you, not on me, to get your questions out here. Okay. So what questions you guys have, let me know. We have a lot of the same questions week to week, and occasionally somebody will surprise me with a question I've never heard of. But that's pretty hard to do considering I've done hundreds and hundreds of these lives over the years. If you go to my YouTube channel, I don't know how many lives there are, but it's definitely got to be 300 or more live streams, right, of these Q&As. Okay, here you go. There you go. So the question is, should you start your own brokerage, get your own license, or should you start as a 1099 freight agent for another company? All right. So the answer that you don't want to hear is it depends. Okay. But let me give you a little bit of color and nuance and texture to that. So if you don't have a lot of experience or you don't have any experience in trucking or logistics, okay, or if you don't have the capital or the credit necessary to get started, you should absolutely start as a freight agent, a 1099 freight agent. And here's why. Because it's less risk, it's less cost, it's easier because you're only handling one side of the equation, and the income opportunity can be significant. Agents get paid 50 to 70% of the profit on any given load. That means if you run a $2,000 load and there's 20% margin, you pay the carrier $1,600, there's $400 in profit. If you're getting 50% of that, that's $200 in profit in your pocket from just one load. You do one of those a day, you made $1,000, right? That's $1,000 a week from one load a day, okay, as an agent making 50%. So it doesn't take long. It adds up quick. There's a lot of agents that are doing 5, 10, 15 or more loads a day once they have a customer base. So if you don't have any sort of a background or you don't have the capital or credit necessary to get your bond and get started, absolutely start as a freight agent. You can get started for hundreds of dollars, get a little bit of training, hook up with an agent. You're probably going to have to pay for maybe a TMS or load board. So you might have a couple $100 a month expense there, and you're off to the races. As long as you can sell and you understand the fundamentals of how to move freight, that's where to go. Now, I don't know enough about you, Elite Canine Academy. So if you do have experience as a truck driver or on the shipper side, or maybe you were a broker in a W-2 or whatever the case may be, maybe you were a dispatcher, if you have that type of experience and you have decent credit and a little bit of capital, right, a few $1,000 in capital in order to get started, you might want to consider starting your own brokerage and getting your own authority. But that really depends upon you. There's no one size fits all answer for that. Okay. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of color, a little bit of texture, a little bit of nuance to how to help you make that decision. If you have a follow-up question, let me know. Dennis, looking for advice on in-person visit, front door or dock entry. Dock entry might land you in jail. Okay, so Dennis, this is a question I want you to ask inside of our group call Wednesday, okay? But I will give a little bit of feedback here. We can dive into it a lot deeper during our group coaching call on Wednesday for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. I think that what I would probably do is let me see, let me just try to give you a little bit of, let me just think about it for 1 second, because you added a little bit of context to it. You're worried about going to jail. Typically, that's not going to happen. I've never heard of anybody going to the back dock and trying to knock on the dock door, getting arrested, or ever even having the cops called. So I don't think that that's a real issue. So typically what I would probably do, because I'm a little bit more aggressive, I would probably try to go to the dock first. And if they denied me there, I would go to the front. I would go to the front door. Okay. I wouldn't go to the front door and then the back door. I'd probably go back door, front door. But again, that's just personal choice. Either way, The reality is you should probably do both. Okay. The first time, maybe you're going to the dock. The next time, maybe you're going to the front door. So I think you want to cover all angles. It's kind of like not just relying on the phone or not just relying on email or not just relying on face-to-face. Ideally, you're going to have a multi-touch point, multi-channel outreach strategy that's going to increase your number of contacts and allow you to start a conversation with your prospects. So hope that helps. Caitlin has a question. What's a good way to find freight agents for our new brokerage? Caitlin, great question. So number one, you said new brokerage. So let me just take a second here and just kind of give you a little bit of a segue. I want to give you a little bit of feedback before I talk about how to. I want to talk about should you, okay? So as a brand new broker, okay, I get this question all the time. When should I start hiring agents? Well, here's my opinion. You have your broker license. You've set up your systems, your TMS, your CRM. You've got your vetting processes. You've got customers that you're actively moving freight for, your own customers of which you've went out and secured those customers. You've started moving freight. You've started billing shippers. You've started paying carriers. You've built your credit, right? And you've built your processes where you have something of value to offer an agent. But as a brand new broker, if you don't have those systems in place, if you don't have that credit, if you don't have a carrier database, if you don't have any real foundation yet, what is it that you're going to offer an agent? Okay. There's tons of opportunities out there for agents. You don't, and so the reality is if you don't have the basic fundamental business running, and I'm not saying you don't, Caitlin, maybe you do already. Okay. But this is for everybody. You said new brokerage, right? So as a new brokerage, I don't recommend you go out and focus on hiring agents. For all the reasons I just gave you, what I recommend is that you go out and start getting your own customers, start moving your freight, start building your system, start building your credit. And then once you have accomplished that, maybe you've done, maybe you're doing 5 or 10,000 a month in profit. Okay. So you've got a little bit of a foundation of your business and you've got some carriers that you're running with regularly and you've got at least A or B credit on the load boards and you're set up with some of the major factoring companies. Now you have the foundation of what you need in order to be able to put a product out there for agents to grab onto and really truly have value where you can support them, especially in their early days. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, Caitlin, let me know. That's probably not the answer you wanted. Oh, let me give you this. Now, let's assume that you do meet those requirements. Okay, let's assume that you do meet those basic requirements. My favorite place for you or new brokers or any broker to go out and find agents is LinkedIn. So if you are an agent recruiter, you should be posting content daily on LinkedIn that's highly relevant to your target audience, which is existing agents and people that want to become agents. So I would highly suggest that you get on LinkedIn, you start posting daily content, and then you start building an audience. And then that content is going to start conversations. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people watching you and watching you and watching you, maybe for days or weeks or months. And then all of a sudden you're going to get a message in your inbox that says, hey, I've been watching you for a while. I've been considering switching from this company. I'd like to get on a call. Or how do you handle this? Or what's your commission structure? Or whatever the case may be. I think that's the best place to find agents. It's not a job board, okay? You can place ads on a job board like Jobs and Logistics or Indeed.com or even job ads on LinkedIn if you want. And those can work, but it really depends on who your audience is. If you're focused on brand new agents who don't have a book of business or really don't have experience, you're not going to have a problem filling those gaps. But if you're focused on people who have industry experience or a book of business already, you're probably going to be better off on LinkedIn using it as a virtual networking tool and building a following through content and through community. So I hope that helps. You've got a follow-up, let me know. Question is, I'm a freight agent beginning with Global Trans, which my best friend owns his branch and trying to gain leads. Okay. There was no question there. I am a freight agent beginning with Global Trans. Okay. So give me a question. That was more of a statement. What's the question? Follow up with a question. I'll try to help. Yes. Awesome. Freight Hustler. Love it. You're here as always. Okay. The suggestion for agents working with a company having to maintain a certain percentage for loads, but trying to navigate the cost for fuel while staying the margin of what the customer will give. Okay, so your question is, you're working as an agent for a brokerage and they have a minimum percentage margin, okay, for each load, but trying to navigate that cost for fuel expenses, okay, because costs have increased. And then the margin, obviously, that customers are trying to press back and not increase prices. Listen, regardless of whether you have a minimum margin or not, okay, because some agency programs have a minimum margin, like they have to make at least $50 a load. If the broker can't make $50 a load, they don't want to process it. Okay. Some agent programs will take losses. Okay. And they'll share the losses with you, but that depends upon the agent program themselves. So they don't have a minimum margin. I think the trend these days is towards not having a minimum margin, but you'll probably find that some of the larger companies that are higher volume might require you to have a minimum margin. I know that when I had my brokerage, LDI, before I sold it, we had a minimum margin. Okay. We had $50 a load we had to make just in order for it to make sense. Now that may have changed. I don't know what their policy is now because I sold it 10 years ago, but I know that there are a lot of companies out there that don't have it and some do. So now let's dive into how to handle it. You handle it just like you handle any other sort of volatility. Okay. Number one, you're not the only one that's telling them that rates are going up. They're feeling it across the board. They're feeling it with their asset-based carriers, and they're feeling it with their brokers. So this is nothing new to them. All right. The fact is, margin rates, as fuel goes up, as capacity goes down, and spot market rates go up, shippers are going to feel it. Your job during this volatility is twofold. All right. Customer retention, right, of your existing clients, and then getting out there and putting your prospecting hat on to acquire new clients. And the reason being, the new client opportunity is much larger when there's volatility. You've probably heard me say it before. Volatility creates opportunity. So that means that as a new broker or even an established broker, maybe you've kind of fallen out of the prospecting mode because you've got a pretty good book of clients, because you don't want to make hundreds of phone calls, or maybe you're too busy to make hundreds of phone calls in order to get new clients. The reality is now is the time to strike, because what happens during these volatility moments where fuel goes up and spot market rates go up, what happens is that door opens up a little bit and shippers are much more opportunistic and much more likely to bring on a new vendor during this time. Okay. So this is the time to strike for getting new clients. Again, volatility creates opportunity. With your existing clients, the best you can do is focus on complying with your brokerage, which is having their minimum margin. Occasionally, you may lose money on a load. Okay. That's going to happen from time to time, especially during volatility. But as things start to settle out with other providers, what you're going to notice is you can probably bump that rate up and rebuild that margin. But yes, again, customer retention is critical when there's volatility, but you can look at it as a double-sided sword, right? You got to work harder to retain the clients, but you also have a great opportunity to get new clients. So if you got a follow-up, let me know. Cold calling seems dead. I've called 50 people a day for 2 weeks. No one's trusting you over the phone. I hit LinkedIn and got warm calls right away. Okay, MMM freaks. All right, well, first of all, our MMA freaks. I love MMA, by the way. Huge UFC fan. So I don't want to get off on topic, but I'm a huge fan. So cold calling's not dead. Okay. I, as well as many, many other people, have proved year over year over year over year, cold calling is not dead. Now, it's not easy, But the biggest problem that new brokers or new agents have is they sound like everybody else. You sound like a broken record. There's one of 3 or 4 pitches that most new brokers and new agents use. Hey, I've got trucks in your area. I wonder if we can maybe quote on some of your loads. Or, hey, we're a freight brokerage. We could save you money on some of your freight. Or, hey, we've got access to thousands of trucks. I would wonder if we might be able to get your bid package and quote on some of your lanes. And those pitches suck. I hate to say it, but if you're using any facsimile of any of those 3 pitches, please stop and save yourself the time. The reason being is because shippers have heard those scripts, those pitches, that crap over and over and over and over again. They ad nauseum. And so what's happened is it's built up to the point where now that it's a trigger event for shippers. When they hear that cadence, when they hear that script, when they hear that outline, when they hear that pitch, what happens is it automatically triggers a negative response. And so you're 5 or 10 or 15 seconds into your call and you're immediately getting a rebuttal like, oh, we're happy with our current providers. We don't use brokers, or, call me back in 30 days, or send me some information, or some crap objection you're getting in the first 5 or 10 seconds. And if you're getting quick early objections, that is your problem. You sound like everybody else. So the key here is 2 words: be different. Sound different. Don't say the same things as everybody else. So you need to learn how to create a compelling sales hook that's specific to your niche or your audience or your prospect. That's what I teach in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. That's the reason why Dennis is, and several other members. That's why over 1,000 clients have went through the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Good time for an infomercial. I'll give you a shameless plug. If you guys are struggling with sales, if you're struggling to get shippers, okay, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. You can't sign up for the program right now. It's closed. It's sold out. But if you get on the wait list, the next time I open it up, probably in the next few months, you will get notified and you'll be able to check out the details and get enrolled if that's something that makes sense for you. Okay. But if you're not on the wait list, you won't get notified. Okay. So get on the wait list for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Let me go back to, again, that's freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. What was that question? Hold on. I'm trying to pull that question back up. I lost it in the feed here. My bad. Oh boy. Hold on. Scrolling. Hold on. Sorry. I'll find it. Oh, there it is. Okay. MMA Freaks. So, but with that in mind, I love LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. I just talked to another person in the audience about getting agents for their business. It works just as well, if not better, for getting shippers. So yes, LinkedIn is an amazing tool, but it's not enough on its own typically to create enough leads or conversations for the average person to make it make sense. So what I teach is a multi-touch point outreach strategy, a multimodal strategy where you're using the phone and email and LinkedIn and face-to-face if possible. And what happens is, here's the reality. If you and I are in a race to have 100 conversations with the exact same leads, and I'm using those 4 channels properly, and you're just using phone or email or LinkedIn or face-to-face, who's going to start a conversation with those prospects faster? Me. Just the reality. It's just logic, right? So that's the reality. So I do love LinkedIn. So what LinkedIn allows you to do is start developing a relationship and a little bit of rapport from a distance, where it turns a cold call into what I call a warm call. Okay. Let's say, perfect example, MMA Freaks, you're a prospect of mine, and we start engaging on LinkedIn through someone's post, and then I send you a connection request and you accept that connection request. You've looked at my profile. We've had a little bit of engagement. And then I decide I'm going to call you. I've just turned a cold call into a warm call. So I think that's a great way to do it. But again, it's still cold outreach, whether that be LinkedIn or email or face-to-face or phone. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. And again, huge fan of MMA. Glad you are too. Oh, okay. Any secrets you can share getting a tight, trusted, and vetted selected carrier network other than using vetting tools? Working with them, talking to them, best practices in your experience. Okay, let me read this again. Any secrets you can share in getting a tight, trusted, and vetted select carrier network other than using vetting tools? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to kind of, if this is about vetting, okay, if this is about, there's two things I'm seeing here. You're trying to build a network of select carrier network, right? That you have a really good relationship with. But you're also talking about vetting. Vetting is before you have that type of relationship. So vetting is step one. Developing the relationship is step two. So you're going to have to use some sort of a vetting process. Typically, some of those tools make it a lot easier. But the reality is you could do it manually, but manually typically takes a little bit longer, right? You're just verifying the basic fundamentals of what makes them unique and making sure that someone's not trying to spoof you in the back end by representing themselves as a part of an organization that they're not, right? Whether that be through email or through a load board or through phone calls, right? So the vetting process is important, but the relationship piece, if you want to build a strong network, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hack on building a strong network where carriers actually want to work with you. It's really twofold. And it's some of it, it's just so fundamental and simple, but people don't think about it. Number one, whenever you hire a carrier to do a job for you, if they do a good job, something as simple as going out of your way to say thank you can be immensely helpful in developing that relationship, because you would be surprised how few people actually thank a truck driver or thank a dispatcher or thank an owner operator. Okay. So just saying thank you in itself is going to differentiate, which is ridiculous and stupid, but it's a fact. Number two, ask them questions about their business, about their goals, about what they're trying to accomplish, and then try to find a way to help them. Let me say that again. It's not about me. It's about them. Ask them questions about their business, about their goals, about what they're trying to achieve, and try to figure out a way that you can help them. Now, sometimes you helping them is not going to benefit you. Other times you helping them might benefit you, but either way, you should try to help them. Now, again, you're not going to loan them money. You're not going to, put yourself in harm's way, but maybe that is as simple as, identifying a shipper that helps them, on a backhaul lane that they aren't currently being able to fulfill or they got bad rates on. Or maybe you're pointing them to another broker that specializes in a certain niche because you only do van, but they've got some reefer trucks. And now you know a broker that's really good at doing reefer. But ultimately what you're doing is you're going out of your way to help them. You're not making it all about you. Brokers and agents have a really bad habit of focusing on transactions over relationships. And it should be the other way around. It should be relationships over transactions. But the reality is people get so fixated on the whole brokering component of, sell high, buy low, and that making that margin in the middle, they forget about the people that surround it. So if you want to develop strong relationships, those are the types of things you want to do. I hope that helps. If I didn't answer the question, re-ask. Okay. Hope that helped though. Okay. Okay, I'm scrolling. Give me 1 second. Okay, Miriam asks, what are good subject lines to open sent emails? Okay, so I can't give you a subject line that's going to answer that question. There's no one size fits all subject line, but let me give you a little bit of a framework to help you create your subject line. Okay, so number one, you want to try to keep it short. Statistically speaking, if you start getting longer than 3 or 4 words, right, those long subject lines are less likely to get opened. Okay. Try to create some curiosity. Sometimes it's a question, right? Sometimes it's an emoji in the subject line so it sticks out. So ultimately, you want to try to keep it short. You want to, I like to create curiosity. If you look through my emails, right, and the subject lines that I send out, because I send out tons of emails to people on my emails. I've got over 20,000, it's over 20,000 opt-in members on my email list. So I send out emails every single day. And, my subject lines typically invoke curiosity, right? So keep it short, invoke curiosity, make it relevant. Don't make it, spammy where it's not directly related to the email. I mean, you don't want to put, you hit the lottery and then open an email where it's you pitching them as a freight brokerage, right? That's going to create negative energy, negative, they're going to have a negative feel about you, a first impression, and you don't want that. So be honest, keep it short, create curiosity. Those are a couple tips. Okay. Luke asks, how to get the $75,000 bond required by the FMCSA? Really simple. Okay, hold on one second. Boom. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. We don't do bonds, but we have a partner we've worked with who our clients, our students, hundreds of our students have went and used them. They're one of the top freight broker bond providers out there. They work with new brokers, right? Super competitive. So if you go to that link, freightbrokerbootcamp.com, you fill out the form, they're going to reach out to you and they're going to let you know. They're going to ask you some questions. They're going to run your credit. And if you have average to above average credit, you're going to get a quote. If you have bad credit, they probably won't underwrite you. Okay. So bad credit you're better off starting as an agent. But if you're looking for a bond, you fill out that form and they're going to take care of you. I've had hundreds of students go through this process. I've never had any negative feedback, only positive feedback. So I think this is the easiest way for you to do it. There's lots of other bonding companies out there. Some of those freight broker bonding companies don't work with startups, right? And so you run into a problem. This company specializes in startups, so I think they will help you. Good question. I got to find myself here. Hold on. Okay, there you go. That was some advice. Okay. Do you recommend new brokers to get factory credit to pay the carrier or let carriers wait until the shipper pays before the month end? Okay. So do I recommend the new brokers use factoring as a way to pay their freight bills and make sure their carriers get paid on time? That depends. I never used factoring as a startup broker, but that's because we had a little bit of capital behind the scenes that we could deploy and pay carriers before we got paid by the shippers. And then eventually what happened is we operated for a couple of years, and based on those financial records and that proof with the bank then financed us and was able to give us, like a 70% loan on our receivables, right? So all the invoices we had out, if we had $1 million in invoices out, they would give us a $700,000 credit line. But it usually takes a year, 12, 18, 24 months of history with a bank before they're going to finance. But it's much cheaper to do that. So you should always seek bank financing if possible, right? But in the early stages, a lot of times you don't have that opportunity. So having a factoring company is a great way to start. I don't believe it's a long-term business strategy, but it can, if you're growing rapidly, sometimes factoring is a really good tool because you're not able to, your receivables, when you're growing rapidly, cash flow gets tighter. When you're flat, cash flow is flat, right? So as you grow, your cash flow demands become more intense. If you're flat, then those cash flow demands don't go up. They basically stay the same. So it's easier to manage. So when you're a new broker, yeah, absolutely. If you don't have the financial wherewithal, use factoring. I mean, that's how most brokers start. Okay. The problem with making a carrier wait until the shipper pays is the fact that it's not uncommon for shippers to pay in 35 or 45 or even 60 days, depending upon the shipper themselves. And if you make the carrier wait that long, the problem will be your credit will suffer because they're going to report you as a slow pay, right? And if you're a slow pay, then that means your credit's going to go down. And then ultimately, that when your credit goes down, other carriers aren't going to book with you. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow up, let me know. Miriam, what is a low starting point to price a load? Impossible question. It depends. It depends upon the market conditions. Understand something, okay? The freight rates are a function of supply and demand. If there's more trucks than there are loads, then trucks are chasing the loads and rates go down. If there are more loads than there are trucks, trucks are chasing, right? Or, shippers have to chase the trucks and rates go up. Okay. So when there's more loads than trucks, rates go up. When there's more trucks than loads, rates go down. Now, what you have to understand is that every lane and every type of equipment has a different dynamic of load to truck ratios, and that can change. Last year, there was more trucks than there was loads. Pretty, in most of the market, rates were down. But recently, in conjunction with fuel prices going up, but totally separate, the spot market rates have went way up. There are some lanes now where there are way more loads than there are trucks. And so what's happening, rates are going up. So I can't give you there's no one size fits all rate. You have to figure out what the demand is in that lane, and it's dynamic. Okay? Because the rate for a van from Boston to Chicago is different than a van from Chicago to Boston, right? And a rate from Boston to Chicago on a flatbed is different than the rate of a reefer from Boston to Chicago. So there's a lot of variability there, right? So I just want to explain to you, rates are a function of supply and demand, and there is no one size fits all rate. Now, listen, there is still freight that moves in any market where it's below the carrier's operating cost. There are lots of lanes like that. Matter of fact, Boston to Chicago van is one of those lanes. I'll bet you that you could probably book a load like that for less than it costs to run a truck. Now, there are other lanes where it's $4 a mile. Okay, all miles. So that's something you just have to start to understand. That's the reason why I'm a big believer in niching down. When I started, I did Northeast outbound van freight. So it was van freight that originated in New York and PA and New Jersey all the way up through New England. And if it was going west or south, that was our niche, but it was only van. So it allowed us to understand the dynamics of the market, the rates, the carriers, the capacity, the shippers, the nuances associated with the Northeast and our specific niche. And it allowed us to build synergy between our shippers and our carriers, and it allowed us to grow very rapidly. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow up, let me know. Okay. Boom. I use my old BOLs and walk in the front door and say, hey, I got a shipping question about this BOL. They give me the shipper's persons nearly every time. Okay. Well, that's one way to do it. Kudos to you. You found a way through the gatekeeper. No, fuel surcharge and capacity and freight rates are different. Okay. Currently, right now, spot market rates are going up and fuel's going up. But there are times when fuel goes up and spot market goes down, believe it or not. So freight rates, okay, and fuel are different line items. Most brokers operate on an all-in rate or a spot market rate where it's an all-in rate from Boston to Chicago is $1,000, today, this week, right? contract freight a lot of times, especially if you're working as a carrier or even if you're a broker and you're doing large bids or contract freight, now you're going to have a line haul rate and you're going to have a fuel surcharge. So it might be $1.65 a mile plus 35%, right? Or some percentage or some cents per mile. That's a lot more contract freight related. Most freight that brokers operate with, especially newer brokers with small to medium shippers, is spot market freight. So I hope that helps. Okay, what would be the best rate to attract carriers during today's market? Not many carriers want to work with brokers without credit rating. What's the best rate? The best rate is the highest rate that you can pay them and cover your truck, right? To cover your truck and to make sure the freight picks up and delivers on time at your shipper and still make a little bit of money, still make 10 or 20% margin. That's the best rate. I can't tell you what that best rate is. You guys are thinking that you're going to go out and quote $2.50 a mile to every carrier and every shipper. You're going to quote $2.50 a mile to a carrier and you're going to quote $2.75 a mile to a shipper on a 1,000-mile load. And you think that's going to win business. That's not going to win business. There is no one size fits all rate that is going to allow you to win business from a shipper and cover the loads. You have to figure out what that lane does. So the first time we ran a Boston and Chicago, I had no clue. But once we posted it and we had a whole bunch of trucks calling in, we knew there was a lot of competition for it. So we knew the rate was going to be lower. So then we figured out the rate and we figured out who the carriers were. And then we understood how to quote it while making money. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to learn the dynamics of your niche. Okay? So I hope that helps. All right, we're getting close here to the end. Okay, let me see if I understand. Where do brokers work for, or is it entirely third-party self-owned entity? Where do brokers work? Okay, so I'm going to try to interpret this question. You can be a freight broker where you have your own freight broker authority and license, and that's where you're independent freight broker. You own your own brokerage and you're authorized by the FMCSA to broker loads in the U.S. Or you can become a 1099 freight agent where you're an independent contractor. So you basically own your own business, but you're working under a freight agent, but you're still an independent contractor and you're getting paid high commissions, 50 to 70%, but you're operating under their authority. So it's a partnership, but you're still an independent contractor. You're not a W-2 employee. They can't tell you when to work. They can't tell you exactly how to operate your business because you're an independent contractor and you operate under their authority. If that wasn't the question, please clarify and I'll try to help. Okay, Miriam, how can I get a prospect to open my sent emails? The biggest problem with focusing heavily on email and getting emails opened is, number one, the subject line. Well, the subject line is one, but the biggest issue is that most corporate email systems have a very aggressive spam filter that tries to filter out spam. And what I mean by spam is people that they don't recognize as an existing member of one of their users' address books or an email that's never been opened before, right? So those spam filters are very aggressive in corporate America because they're trying to lessen the opportunity to get viruses and they're trying to create productivity efficiencies without having people spam them. So ultimately, the spam filters are probably your biggest challenge. You'd be surprised that a lot of email that gets sent out to companies never hits the inbox. So a lot of times it's not the person that's rejecting you, it's the corporation spam filters. So, the way there isn't much you can really do about that, right? Except try to have a multi-channel outreach approach where you're using the phone and face-to-face and LinkedIn and other channels, right? To try to overcome that problem. So yeah, there's just not much you can do about it. The next thing is you obviously want to have a strong subject line that invokes some sort of curiosity to get them to click. So I hope that helps. Also, your domain, if you have a brand new domain name, That also is a big factor into the spam filters because they know how long this domain has been around. They can tell. There's trust levels on domain names. So if you have ABC Brokerage and you just got that domain a month ago, it's not going to be trusted as much as a ABC, trucking that's had a website domain for 10 years. So they're more likely to get put through the spam filters than a brand new website domain. So I hope that helps. All right. So listen, guys, here's what I got. If you are curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, and you're on the fence and you maybe you're a truck driver, maybe you're the spouse of a truck driver, maybe you're a dispatcher, maybe you worked in W-2 as a brokerage, but you want to get out and become your own broker or agent, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com, well known to be the most cost-effective, comprehensive online freight broker, freight agent training program. Had that program since 2009. I personally, we've done over $200 million as a freight broker before I sold that company. And we've trained over 10,000 students in 16 different countries. We are by far the most trusted brand in freight brokerage and freight brokerage training. So you can check that out, freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Plus, we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. I can't make it much better than that, right? So if you're curious about becoming a freight broker, you could take that. It's an online course. Once you enroll, you'll get instant access to all of the training, all the information, everything you need in order to become a freight broker or freight agent, okay? Now, if you're struggling with sales, okay? If you're struggling with sales and getting shippers, maybe you're already a startup broker or startup agent, right? Or maybe you're about to get your authority or your agency and you're struggling with sales and sales is going to be an issue or is your kryptonite. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That is the wait list for my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching and mentoring program. That's where I work with you personally and teach you my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, but my overall system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a broker and allowed many of my clients to build 7 and even 8-figure freight brokerages. So you get on the wait list. You can't enroll today, even if you wanted to. If you sent me a check right now for the full amount, I still can't let you in the program because it's sold out, okay? But the fact is we will open up again probably in the next few months. So you got to be on the wait list. So get on the wait list and you'll get notified when new spots open up. You guys were awesome today. You had a great if you had great questions, do me a favor. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning Dennis, you suck. 10 meaning Dennis, this was awesome. Anywhere in between. If it's anything less, give me a rating of 1 to 10. If it's anything less than an 8, just tell me why. Give me some feedback. What can I do better? Obviously, I screwed up the tech at the very beginning, so I apologize for that. Try not to ding me too hard there, but the tech did screw up. So hopefully you guys were able to hear this and get some value. But on a scale of 1 to 10, let me know where you guys stand. Okay, Jarrell, you need access to your account? Email support@freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Explain your problem, then they'll help you today. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Great feedback. Thank you so much. Yes. Michael Killian. Awesome. Done both programs. Thank you. Freight Hustler 9. Awesome. I love it. Sweet. Great feedback, guys. Thank you so much. Totally appreciate you guys being here. I want you to have an awesome day, an awesome week. I'll be back next Monday with another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Plus, just a quick teaser here. I got a big announcement coming soon. Big announcement. You guys are going to be excited. I don't want to spill the popcorn in the lobby. I'm not going to give you too much information, but I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks, I have a big announcement. I've been working on it for months and months and months. And oh my God, I cannot wait to get this thing live. I think you guys are going to be excited. I know I'm excited. And so I'm just going to tease you a little bit with that. But again, I do appreciate your guys' feedback. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And I'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all.